Welcome to Finding Joy Live. I am so glad to be here today, live with Jessica Frey. Sorry. I kept
Okay.
telling myself, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up. And that's when you do it.
It's okay.
Jessica Frey, it is so nice to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
It is so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I am really happy that we'll be talking about this topic of sort of how do we overcome negativity and negative thoughts and negative patterns and all of that kind of stuff that hangs around in that area and get really into going for joy. How do you relate to that?
I relate to that in thinking about things that have happened throughout my life and, the last handful of years, especially. I specifically notice, like when my Facebook memories come up, that a lot of the memories from years past were very angry and like negative.
Mm.
And it's such a shift now in the things that I post and the content that I share. It's so much more positive and uplifting and inspiring than it was in the past.
I love that you bring this up, this way of looking at ourselves in the past and saying, how does that feel compared to where I am now? Am I someplace that I'd like to be more now than I was then? Especially because I think with anger, it's super easy to be completely unaware of yourself, to be like,
Mhm.
I'm not angry. What are you talking
Mhm.
about? Right?
Yeah.
And everybody around you goes like, I gotta go wash the dishes. And you're like, I don't know why everybody left. So I love that you had this like mechanism, a good use for social media, which I know
Yeah.
people love to complain about, but there's a lot of great stuff that we can do with it and how we can relate to ourselves with it. Um, Let me ask you, was there something specific? Like, was there like I was ranting and raving, or like what was going on in that old self?
Lots of rants for sure, but also just like almost like complaining about
Mm.
anything and everything, and even like little things that I look at now and I'm like, it's almost laughable how angry I was about certain things. And I mean, obviously, we all get angry. I still get angry about things, but the reaction and the thought process when I react is different than before when I was doing it.
Yeah, and this is such a great point that sometimes we're kind of that's just our set point. It's just what we're doing. So if somebody comes along and they cut us off in traffic, that's how we're going to react. And
Mhm.
if something happens and somebody writes a email that feels a little rude or something, we're just going to go on about that and on about it and on about it because that's where we're living, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do and get caught up in. And then it's like a spiral when it starts. And,
Yes.
you have to catch yourself and be like, whoa, hold on.
Yes.
Where are we going?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Awareness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So now, so what kind of changed in that time for you? How did you decide, like, did you become aware that you were angry? What happened in there?
I did become aware. And there were a couple things that contributed to my awareness. One of them was therapy, talking to someone who is kind of outside of everything, I think helped me become aware of some of the things that were going on. But also, I started writing in a gratitude journal, and it's
Mm.
something that I do every single day. So I wake up in the morning and I write something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm inspired by, and a goal for the day. And this was kind of inspired through my cousin and his wife, that they used to do this daily Facebook Live every day. They did it for a year straight. And I used to tune in, and then I started writing the journal. And it really was the shift in kind of reminding myself every day that there's always something to be grateful for, even in like the negative things that are happening, or if I'm angry about something, kind of just stopping and recognizing the lesson or the positivity. And it's hard to do sometimes, and it's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight. But now I think that was like a little over 2 years ago that I started doing that, and now it's literally a part of my morning routine. And I find myself, even when I'm not writing in the journal and things are happening, I stop myself and I'm like, but wait, where's the positive in this?
Mm. Mm. Such a good one. I love that you're talking about this in terms of entrainment, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
like when we're stuck in a rut, any kind of vibrational rut, right? Just like a record player, this is
Mm-hmm.
how we know how to go around in the circle that is our day, right? Sun
Mm-hmm.
rises and closes and all that sets. And you know, when we do that and we're in that rut, then there's kind of no way out of it except a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And so this concept of essentially like emotionally rehearsing, right? Changing your mindset, sitting down, having an intention of being appreciative of something.
Yes.
That's a really big change from how we go through our day to day. And that ability to say I will entrain myself, even though those probably weren't the words you used, and keep doing it because you had this great encouragement. That is one of the great benefits of a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And I think it's important for people to realize and remember that habits, like, you don't break them overnight. And I really think that that's something that, so often, people, when they start anything new, they expect the change to be immediate, and it doesn't happen that way. You have to it's a conscious effort to make those changes. And once you're past it and you can look back and see the results and the change, then all of that time in between seems a lot more worth it, because you can see what happened from A to B.
yeah, yeah. I often talk about the emotions like they're a map, and you're sort of describing it in that same way, but through time. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're in the town of anger, it's really far away. You got to get in a car and drive to joy, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not in the same vicinity. You can get to
Hmm.
frustration, you can get to irritation, bordering towns very easy, right?
Yeah.
But to really sort of get all the way to super happy or to contented, deeply satisfied, those are pretty far from any of those negative
Yeah.
emotions that we're dealing with.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this question that we have, right? How to overcome the negative that keeps you from joy. And the negative that keeps us from joy is our practiced negative, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're talking about here, that we practice it by
Yeah.
accident.
Yeah. And then it becomes so second nature that you're doing it sometimes and you don't even realize you're doing it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. So raising that awareness. Now, this is really, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were talking about the right place for awareness and the sort of misused place for awareness, because a lot of times people are, as you said, they're in a place where they're unhappy, but they don't really know it, right? They're
Hmm.
angry or irritated or frustrated or depressed, even, but they don't have any awareness of that. They're just like, this is what life is. I don't know what you're on about.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the perfect place for awareness, right? That's when you
Hmm.
need to go, something's got to change. But I find
Yeah.
a lot of times people get to the place where they're like, something's got to change, but I am, and they keep pointing themselves back to the, but I'm angry, but I'm irritated, but I'm depressed. And that awareness is only good for that first part, right? Because
Hmm.
then we have to look forward. We have to look in a different
Yeah.
direction. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's hard for people to do sometimes too, because again, they're so used to being stuck in that space that to see the way out, it's easier to just stay where they are instead of
Yeah.
doing whatever it needs to be to get to the joy,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I was thinking about how I know you have a podcast, and the title of your podcast is so related to what we're talking about. It feels like it's really, tell us about your podcast.
Okay, so the podcast is called Unapologetically Overcoming, and it's still pretty new. I just started it back in June. And essentially, it's talking about topics that have some sort of a stigma related to them. Because the whole purpose is I want people to understand that they're not alone in whatever they're going through.
Mm.
And also that whatever they're going through, they can get through and overcome whatever it is, and that, it gets better on the other side.
Mm. Mm.
So that's the abbreviated version of the
That's
podcast.
really great. That's really great. Yeah, because we're talking about this sort of like taking steps. And I love that your cousin and his wife inspired you to those
Mhm.
steps, right? Sometimes people are looking for steps and they don't find them, right? They don't find the
Yeah.
right fit for them.
Hmm.
It's why people like me make membership sites and things like that, so that people can find that space where they can really fit, and there are people there who are where you might want to be.
Hmm.
I was thinking a while back about what my 20-year-old would have, myself at 20 years old would have
Hmm.
thought about me. And for a long time, I thought, oh, she would have much rather you were a bike riding badass than who you are now. But she probably would have died of smoking or something by now, or
Right,
drinking
right.
or something, right? So it's a funny thing when we look at like who do we want to be? We really have to reach for the next person, right? Because I didn't get here overnight. I didn't go from
Right.
20 to where I am like that.
Hmm.
I went here through years of I'd like to be this way. No, I'd like to be this way. Oh, this way feels better. I'd like to keep
Hmm.
moving in that direction, right? And so
Yeah.
that sort of gradual entrainment, it takes you places that you never even knew you could go.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't even realize it's happening. But then one day like something happens and it's a different reaction or a different feeling in you, and then you realize and you're like, "Oh,
Mm.
this is where we need to be."
Mm, mm. Yeah, so we were talking a little earlier about reactions to people and how that has changed.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that? How has that changed in the since those years passed?
So I try, and I say try because again, I'm human. We all make mistakes. We all slip back into old habits from time to time. But I used to be really quick to react to other people's behaviors and actions. And now I try to take a second before I react and kind of think about why they might be thinking or feeling or acting the way that they are, and try to understand that instead of just reacting without thinking.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's important, especially with all of the things that have happened in the world in the last handful of years. There's so many different opinions, there's so many different ways of looking at things and thinking about things and feeling about things that you really do have to stop for a second and kind of just think about what the other person might be going through or where they might be coming from, because when you do that you kind of start to understand a little bit more. So maybe whereas like the old Jessica would have reacted to a situation and just immediately like jumped down someone's throat, I really do try to take a step back and kind of think and process for a minute before I just automatically become angry about something.
Yeah, this is a great example of a healthy detachment, right? When we start to study, there are a lot of spiritual practices where really start to get in touch with that part of you that is more than what we think is here, right? It's
Yeah.
that part of you that feels eternal, right? That part of you that can't really be hurt by what people are saying because you kind of know that all is well with you, even when you don't, it isn't, right? Even when
Yeah.
things are going bad in your life, there's sort of that core. And when you can tap into that part of you, this is exactly what you're describing, tapping into that part of you and being able to, when people go like, rah, 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 you go, oh, I am actually a spirit. I am actually something more than just this body that's about to defend itself or
Mhm.
be afraid for my life, right? Because that's sort of what the
Mhm.
body is meant to do, is like keep us safe and keep
Yeah.
us from getting eaten by bears and, stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think too, just remembering that like not everything needs a reaction. Because I think that's important too. Because that was also, I was real, like, I used to be really quick to just immediately react to everything. And some things they don't need a reaction because it's almost like wasted energy. When you think about it after the fact, like I got angry about that. It's not even something that really deserved my energy to be angry about.
Mm, yeah, that's a really good point. That is an excellent point, right? That we're sometimes we just spray our energy everywhere,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
we don't like we're not judicious about like maybe I'd like to grow this part of my life and not that part of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about is the podcast all you or do you interview people?
Have had a handful of guests, and then in between, like on the off weeks when I don't have guests, I sometimes will just do like a quick little message from me, talking about certain things. So I did one on like gratitude, and I actually did one it was kind of an interesting thing, about birthdays and like celebrating, but like celebrating you, not just on your birthday. So I talked about that. I did one specifically related to my eating disorder because I was diagnosed with an eating disorder about 10 years ago. So I did one where I talked about that. But the plan is to continue to have more people on, to talk about their things that they've gone through, that they've overcome, and then me sharing in between when I don't have a guest on.
Hmm. So let's touch on that if you don't mind talking about it. Talk a little bit about yes, the eating disorder, but what have you had to deal with around that in terms of feelings?
There's a lot of feelings related to it, and when I was first diagnosed with it, I didn't really talk to people about it. um, and probably within like the last year or so, which in comparison to when I was actually diagnosed and now, it's been a huge, pretty large amount of time. Um, but when I would tell people that, the reaction from them was always like, oh, well, you don't look like you have an eating disorder, or, comments like that. And then it would be like, do I really want to get into a conversation with them about, educating them about eating disorders and how you don't have to look a certain way to be diagnosed with one? So, it's,
And how you're not actually qualified to judge whether I have an eating disorder
there's,
or not.
there's
Do
two.
you have
Yeah.
a medical degree? I did I miss it? I'm not
Right.
sure. Yeah.
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 Yeah, people do take liberties on those kinds of things, especially with certain types of things like eating
Yep.
disorders. Like, you know,
Yeah.
they have a certain idea of what it should be, and
Yeah.
if you're not okay
Hmm.
and you look fine,
Right.
then it can be threatening for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes for so many types of, you know, issues and medical conditions and everything. Like, if you don't look a certain way, then you can't possibly be going through whatever it is that you're saying
It's
you're
true.
going through.
It's true. I don't drink alcohol. And if I go to parties, when I go to parties, certain people get
Mm-hmm.
really uncomfortable that I don't drink alcohol. Like somehow my just not wanting to drink alcohol is worrisome for them. It's
Yeah.
like, no, you have to be who I am because then I'm okay. And I
Right.
think that's part of that detachment that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you kind of find yourself
Yeah.
inside and you can kind of tap in a little more, then their opinion becomes so much less loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as you've pointed out, you can learn some great skills. Those were great skills to be able to say, you know, maybe this is not a topic I want to bring up with you, or I want to continue
Mm-hmm.
with you, and to be really clear about, oh, I'm continuing the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people feel like they bring up the topic, but they didn't quite mean to, and then other people say things, and then you're engaged, and
Yeah.
forget it. Forget it.
Yep.
Then it's over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a really, um, it's
Welcome.
a big thing for this topic, and also a big thing for being unapologetic, right? Of just being
Yeah.
like, look, this is where I am. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to
Yep.
please you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so great. That's so great. Let me check on the comments again. We've had some comments here. Okay. So, Colleen came. Colleen has been a guest here on this podcast and others that I've done, and she's a really great healer.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started talking about sometimes no response is the best, and that's right. That's a really good point that you brought up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she said, when I quit drinking, it took way longer for my family to get used to it than it did for me. So that's really interesting. It's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes our support systems, they're not ready for us to be different.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. And so actually, so I have this membership, and one of the reasons that I have this membership is exactly that. Because when we change, when we go like, well, when my 20 or my inner 20-year-olds from all that time ago, like, that's who my family knows, right?
Right.
That's who all of the people that I've known all these years know, right? They also know me as I am now, but those changes along the way, they're hard to make in your preset environment, right? Because they already know,
Yeah.
like, I remember there was this one time my friend from college came to visit, and I don't think I've ever told this story before. But she came to visit, and so I always wore black.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thing. I always wore black.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked in the theater, and so everybody always wore black. And
Mm-hmm.
she came, and I remember looking around my room going, I have to find something black to wear. I have to find something black, or she'll think I'm not the same person, you know? And so I found this black shirt, and she comes, and we visiting and everything, and she's like, you are so different. And I was like, what? And she's like, you don't even wear black anymore. And I was like, wait, this is my black shirt. And she was like, that shirt that you think is black has giant splashes of color all over it. And she was right. It had giant like balls of color all over it
Well, that's
that I
funny.
didn't even notice, right? Because I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, so sometimes we're just trying to fit in a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but it's kind of uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so I love that colleague brings that up. That's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It takes a while for us to get used to it.
Yeah. I agree.
And I think your approach of being just unapologetically yourself about it is a really important approach.
Yeah. And I mean, even that sometimes is hard to do because sometimes people don't know how to receive you when you're just being who you are. And I will say that I'm extremely grateful for the people in my life who know me and love me for who I am on my good days and on my bad days, because the reality is we all have bad days, and we're allowed to have bad days. And I don't think it's weird that somehow having a bad day is like the end of the world or a bad thing. And it's not, like we're allowed to have bad days. We're allowed to have bad moments. And that doesn't negate all of the good and the positive. We just have to not stay stuck in that moment and, get back up and continue on to the joy, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. That is a key to getting to joy, is just don't stop. Right? If you're going on your little map and you pause in frustration, irritation, even contentment, right? Satisfaction, contentment. If you stop there, then you're not going to get to joy or happiness, or right? Yeah, I love that. So I love this. Colleen says, it does take some courage to be yourself, Jessica. Good on you for that. So that's really sweet.
Thank you.
Nice support. Really wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Really wonderful. Well, so tell me a little bit about, we never really got to the where you're from and, what all of that. So give me a little bit more about that.
I live in New York.
In Manhattan?
Kind of up. No.
Oh, where do you live?
More upstate, like near Albany area.
Near Albany. So I moved from Western Massachusetts in the Berkshires, from Williamstown, which is really close to Albany.
Okay. Yep. I grew up in a very small town, which people never know when I say where it is. They're like, "What is that? I've never heard of that before." But yeah, I've lived in New York my entire life.
Well, I understand that it's very snowy right now.
Yes, we just got a little bit of a snowstorm on Sunday. It snowed. So yeah.
My siblings were keeping me in the loop there. They're like, it's 6 inches of snow. I was like, well, you could have flown. Come on. Come on.
Yeah. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I'm still here after 41 years. So
oh my goodness.
I just have to deal with it, I guess.
Yeah. Some people love it, but then everybody else just has to put up with it, I guess. Well, I so appreciate you taking this time to visit with us and to share about you and about how you've done this. And okay. Colleen says a little bit of snowstorm is relative for New York, upstate New York, which is true. It really is relative. So over in the Berkshires, they got 6 inches at my siblings' house. You got about how much?
I think that's what we got too. Yeah. And I say little because I know like Buffalo a couple weeks ago got like 70 inches of snow or something. I mean, something great. It was like,
we don't even measure. It's under a foot. Who's measuring? Come on. It's just a bit of a snowstorm. Colleen should tell us about where she lives, the type of snowstorms they get there, because I think she's in Pennsylvania, which can get some real snow. That can get some real snow sometimes. Yeah. Maybe not this early in the season, though. But I really appreciate you coming and talking to us. And I feel like you've really brought some keys here to get from overcoming those negative spots in life to getting into joy. And that is really, really deeply appreciated by me and by our listeners. So again, don't forget to check out Jess's podcast, Unapologetically Overcoming. The link is there, but it looks like if it's Bean Pod, then it's probably on all of the different places. So if you go to Apple Podcasts, you can probably type in Unapologetically Overcoming, right?
It's actually not on Apple yet. I was having some technical difficulties when I was trying to get it.
It takes longer than the rest.
Yeah. So right now it's only on Podbean, but I do plan to eventually get it on.
Okay, super. So go to Podbean, and I'm going to say it out loud because that way at least we will have done it. Jess.Frey with an E, like the boots, 80.81.podbean.com. com. I said it backwards the first 5 times, but okay. And of course, I have a really fun quiz. That's a 2-minute quiz about joy. It's to figure out where are you on that roadmap, not just emotionally, but actually geographically, because we've laid it out and picked different cities for different spaces that you could be in your life. And if you go there, it's like a 2-minute quiz, 11 questions, super fun, got all different pictures and stuff you can pick from, and have a good time with that. That's roadmaptomorejoy.com. Well, thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here with you.
We'll see you next time.